All right, should we get started? All right, topic of my talk is how I revamped my email autoresponder and essentially doubled my sales since January of this year. So quick show of hands, how many of you guys actually were at my talk last year? Oh, wow, okay, that's more than I thought. Yeah. Okay, a quick recap, just in case for those of the guys who were not there. The basic premise in 30 seconds is that if you have a blog, chances are almost all of your pages are not going to be making you money. And so what you need to do is you need to guide all of your people through your money posts so that you actually do make some money. And the best way to do this is with an email autoresponder sequence. And you can use this autoresponder sequence to sell affiliate offers or your own products. Okay, and so that's my entire hour-long presentation last year in 30 seconds.
That's great.
Okay, so just wanted to give some context for what I'm going to be talking about. This is the product that I sell with my autoresponder sequence. It is essentially a course that walks you through how to start an e-commerce store. And again, it's not important what the product is, but I'm just going to be referring to it from time to time so you understand what it's all about. Okay, and so a couple of characteristics about what I sell. It's actually pretty expensive at $699. Unlike some of the other gurus who kind of launch a product, then close it off, and then launch it again, mine is open all the time. Okay, available every day of the year. And almost every single sale that I get is a direct result of the email autoresponder that I have on my site. Okay, so it's a major sales vehicle for my site. So that's just one thing I wanted to emphasize. Now, last year when I first gave my talk, I was averaging about 150K per year. And hence the talk was, how I made 300K over the last couple of years. I had an email autoresponder of about 9 emails long. And back then, the course was actually priced cheaper at $5.99. Okay. This year, however, I decided to raise the price to $6.99. My income is on track to be double the previous year. And ever since I made some of these changes, course sales have been increased by over 3x. Okay, so it's a very significant increase. And all this stuff actually happened in the month of May. I completely revamped my entire email sequence that I talked about last year, so it's going to be different. And I also redesigned a couple aspects of the sales page and changed up my email sign-up forms. So these are all kind of the things I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about how I doubled the email sign-ups for my list. And I'm going to focus a lot more this time on kind of the human psychology aspects of just selling and what you can do with your email autoresponder sequence. And of course, I'm going to go over some of the exact changes that I made to the sequence to sell my particular course. Now, a lot of these things may or may not apply to what you're trying to sell, but everything I'm going to be talking about is very specific to the course that I just described earlier. Okay, so how do you increase your sales, right? 2 things. You can either get more people in the door, AKA get more signups to your list, or you can convert your existing ones. And so this talk is going to be divided into 2 halves. First half is going to cover how to get more signups. Second half is going to talk about the psychological stuff and the exact sequence that I used. Okay, so does anyone recognize this graphic here? Okay, and how many of you guys have been agonizing over your AdSense placement in order to maximize your revenue? Probably all of you, right? I went through this as well. And the funny thing is, I never thought of applying this diagram to my email signups. And it was only recently when I found out that my email signups are just worth way more than an AdSense click that I actually started paying attention to this. And so you really want, in order to maximize signups, you want to take advantage of this heat map diagram as well. And I just thought I'd tell a short story. Do you guys recognize this guy? He's Brandon. And he's actually the guy who does actually all the work at Bigger Pockets. Josh is just this side man. One day, he emails me, and he said, hey, I was looking at your site, and I noticed that in between your content and your sign-up form, you've got an AdSense ad, and you've got a Facebook box. And he said, we were recently doing experiments on our blog, and we noticed that if you removed the border from your sign-up form, removed all the obstructions between the content and the sign-up form, that actually boosted our conversions. And if you think about it, that's the same principle with AdSense, right? You want it to blend in with the content. You want to remove the borders and make the AdSense look like the content. And that makes it convert. Okay, and so incidentally, if you guys could just tweet that, I call this the Turner technique in honor of Brandon. So if you guys could just tweet that at some point. I just learned the Turner technique from @Brandon @BP. Really appreciate it, because he just tweeted me last night taking a big bite of a big burger, which I didn't appreciate that much. So anyways, so after I used the Turner technique, as you can see here, so the top part is the content. And then my sign-up form, I kind of made it look like the content, so that it just kind of flows into a sign-up form. Sign-ups for this one form increased by over 2x. Okay, and so that was a pretty huge increase, because everybody reads the content. And that's actually the spot where your sign-up form is the most noticeable. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, my top converting AdSense block is actually one above the content. Right? And so naturally, it makes sense to put a sign-up form above the content as well. So I'm using Halpern here as an example, because he does this above the content. For my site, I didn't really want something so obtrusive for my blog. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up putting a little teeny click form in the byline of the article. It looks just like your post. It doesn't really affect things at all. And yet, this is now, I think, my number 3 or 4 highest converting sign-up form. Because it's so obvious, everyone always sees it as soon as they read any single article on the site. My top converting form, and I'm just going to go through these really quick because I got a lot of content here. The pop-up is probably the second highest converting form on the site. Turner technique is number 1. You want to have a slide-in. And the way this works is, as a person is scrolling down the content, this form actually just kind of slides in, like in an animated way. And you notice it right away as you're reading the content. And that way it captures his attention, and that's more likely to lead to a sign-up as well. Okay? And I just want to give a little background about this picture here. So last night I was hanging out with Noah, and he threatened to heckle me during my talk. He's actually not here, I don't think. So I have a whole arsenal of provocative pictures with him in it. Anyways, there's this plugin, sumome.com, which actually implements all this stuff for you in just one nice plugin. So you don't have to worry about 5 or 6 plugins, something that you might want to consider using for your blog. OK, so the next thing I want to talk about, and this was huge for my blog, I started going single opt-in. Now, this is kind of a controversial subject. Because all of the major email marketing firms, they tell you to go double opt-in, right? Because you're going to get more engagement and whatnot, right? And I actually just one day I just sat down, I was looking, and I noticed, I run an e-commerce store on the side as well. No e-commerce store actually does double opt-in. And so I was thinking to myself, OK, I'm just going to check to see how many subscribers I'm losing. And it turns out I was losing 50% of my email subscribers. And then I thought about some more, just from I'm an engineer, from an engineering perspective. These confirmation emails are kind of unsolicited, so I would tend to think, like, if I was running an email marketing firm, these would probably be marked as spam the most. So I'm just thinking to myself, a lot of these confirmation emails probably are just going directly to the spam folder. And so I just did a quick experiment, went to single opt-in, and sure enough, my opt-ins went up by 100%. So I doubled it, essentially. Now, one of the worries about going single opt-in is that the engagement is going to get reduced. Okay, so I looked at the open rate for my single opt-in and my double opt-in as well. And the double opt-in open rate was about 74%. Single opt-in was at around 54%. So it didn't get reduced by half. And so essentially, if you amalgamate both of those things together, taking into account engagement, single opt-in has improved my email list size by over 51%. Okay? Simple math. You got to experiment on this by yourself to see if it makes a difference. And I thought, you guys probably have these questions. Is it going to be spammy? Has the rate of complaints increased and that sort of thing? So about the whole spam thing, there's actually safeguards in place. I actually emailed a couple times with my Aweber rep, and he said that if someone tries to sign up with multiple email addresses, it instantly goes to double opt-in. You're not allowed to subscribe to your list with multiple emails using the same IP address. They actually track that to reduce spam. And I've been doing this now since May, and my rate of complaints has not increased. The only downside I can think of is because the engagement is slightly less, you might have to clean your list more often. But again, this is something you should be doing on a regular basis anyways to remove your inactives from your list. OK, so just to summarize the first part of the talk, Turner technique. Key, tweet that guy. Add a pop-up, form above the content, slide in. And I would suggest that all of you guys at least give single opt-in a try, even if you don't think it's for you. Just try it and see if it makes a difference. And I guarantee you that you will, if you do all these things, you will double the number of email subscribers that you make. Okay? And if you do take the time to think about how much each one is worth, and I know how much that's worth to me, huge, huge difference. OK, so that was actually the boring part of the talk. This stuff's much more fun. So the psychological aspects are just kind of new to me because I'm kind of new to it in a way. My previous autoresponder that I talked about last year, just thought I'd go over the steps. It was a sequence of 9 emails. It was basically an intro and then a pretty good in-depth tutorial on how to start an e-commerce store. Followed by those steps in the tutorial, I gave a hard sell to actually convince someone to pay for the course. And then I had frequently asked questions about my main product. And then I followed it up with products I recommend, which was essentially a collection of stuff that I use for my store, basically services. It was an affiliate play. Okay. So a funny thing happened. I started podcasting in April. And I started interviewing a lot of people who are just really good at everything. And I interviewed this one guy. His name is Dan Fagella. He's actually this really small 120-pound jiu-jitsu expert. He sells jiu-jitsu products, and I can't even pronounce that. But he was kicking major butt with his products. And so I had him, kind of after the interview, we talked a little bit. I showed him my sequence, and he said, man, for a product as expensive as what you're charging, you really got to hit up your people multiple times. Okay, and for me at least, I was always a little bit kind of squeamish about trying to sell my guys multiple times. So I did my hard sell, and that was just pretty much it. I stopped after that. Everything after that initial 9 sequence, I just kind of sent blog posts or whatnot. I wasn't really hitting them up for the offer over and over again. Okay, and so the other thing that happened, which kind of annoyed me a little bit, was I had a reader email me, and you guys can read this or not, but I'll just summarize. This reader told me that she cheated on me, and she signed up for a competing course. Neville, yeah, he's right there, that little punk. Because they were hammering their people, emailing them regularly with offers and descriptions of the course. So they were doing a better job with their email autoresponder than I am. In fact, he should probably be giving this talk, but. Yeah, so that really pissed me off. We're still buds, but it really got on my nerves. And part of the reason why, I'm an engineer by day, and I just tend to be kind of a logical person. And the problem with being logical, and I found this out as soon as I started dating my wife, was, when you're fighting and stuff, nothing's logical, right? And so in order for it to sell something, it turns out that whole process is all psychological. And you really need to tap into the customer psyche in order to make sales. It's not about logic. It's not about the how-to and stuff. It's just all about a bunch of different factors, which were really exciting to me to learn, actually. And so first thing I did, actually, after I lost that sale, is I had lunch. So I still work a full-time job. I had lunch with the head of sales at my company. And I was like, hey, man, how do you sell these products that we sell? And so we had lunch. And he was saying, Steve, bottom line, our products are good, but ultimately people buy from who they like. And that's just the truth. And so in order to sell an expensive product to a stranger, you got to get them to like you somehow. And the best way to do that is to use video, audio, and then text, kind of in that order, right? You got to show off your personality and that sort of thing. Okay, and so what I ended up doing was I created a video that kind of told my story. And in case you guys don't know, I'll give you the 30-second version. When my wife became pregnant with our first child, and she was making 6 figures at the time with her day job, but as soon as she got pregnant, she wanted to quit in order to stay with our kids. And kind of where we live, which is in the Silicon Valley, in order to get a house in a good school district and that sort of thing, you kind of have to have 2 incomes. And so that's kind of how we started our e-commerce store. We ended up supplanting her lost income in a year. And that was kind of our story. And I kind of have this soft spot for parents and people who kind of want to improve their lives, especially parents who are having kids. And so that was kind of the message I wanted to convey. And also, so I started linking to this video, and I also linked to a podcast that told my story as well. Okay. One other thing that I also did was I started revealing a couple more additional quirks about my personality. And so I started linking to this post that was entitled 25 Random Things That You Don't Know About Me. And the key principle for that is, I wanted people to get to know me a little more and kind of relate to me in a way and essentially kind of jump on my bus. Like, these things may not relate to everyone, but I'll just give you a quick example. Quick show of hands, how many of you guys started studying for SATs in the 4th grade? Anyone? Come on, Jim Wang, you're Asian, man. Are you? No? No? Okay. Studied for the SATs in 4th grade, took them in 5th grade, and then went to this nerd program in 6th grade. Just a fun fact about myself. Anyone sing in the audience? Okay. So when I was younger, I tried out for the choir, or the chorus, I should say. And I got in as a piano accompanist. And I thought I was a really good singer. Thought I was really good. And I was singing. I thought I was kicking butt. But then one day the conductor pulls me over. He's like, Steve, your voice is just too powerful. It's good. It's good. He says it's good. But it's just too powerful. So if you wouldn't mind just mouthing the words, that would be cool. And I was young. I was in 6th grade. So I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. It's cool. And so I mouthed the words. But anyways, just another embarrassing story. This book is something that I created for my wife when I proposed to her. And what I did was I chronicled our entire dating story, and I wrote a book, and it had excerpts of emails that we exchanged, our first date, our most important milestones, had it bound in a hardbound book, created a ring holder out of it, and so I read it to her when I proposed, and at the last page was the ring, and that's how I proposed. Okay? So none of these things have anything to do with anything that I sell, right? But what it's, I'm sorry, what's that?
I said my husband is garbage.
But the point is that after telling these stories, we can relate a little bit better, right? I mean, perhaps some of you guys would like, that's Steve, I'm not going to buy his product. But, it makes it a little more likable. The next thing that I started doing, and I got to attribute it to my favorite Indian guy sitting in the second row, is that I started convincing people to reply to my email autoresponder sequence. And in the first email, I asked people, and you probably can't read this, but I tell them to hit reply to the email, introduce yourself, and just kind of tell me your story. And this actually does 2 things. By just hitting reply, you remember when Google started introducing those 3 inboxes? And a lot of times your emails go to the promotional box. But by getting them to hit reply, it will actually make all of your emails end up in their main inbox. Okay? So not only are you creating a conversation, but you're also making your emails more likely to be delivered. So just think about that. Okay, and this one, I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about it because it's a little fluffy. But I started asking readers to hit reply with a statement saying, I will take action with my business. Okay? And the reason for this is by having them say that they're going to commit to something, the likelihood that they'll actually commit is that much higher. I have a quick story about this. Anybody recognize this dress? Okay, this dress pisses me off. And I've watched Frozen like 20 times. And the first time I watched it with my daughter, she really loved the movie. And so I told my wife, I didn't tell my daughter, I told my wife that I was going to get her this dress. Okay, and so, but then I went to the store, and those punks at Disney made it sold out. And her birthday was coming up, and I felt really bad, and so I went and bought her all the other princess dresses just to kind of make up for it, because I mentally in my mind already committed to doing it. And then even to this day, I cannot find this frickin' I can't curse on video, but this frickin' dress. And if you go on Amazon or eBay, they want like $200 for it. Pisses me off. Okay, anyways, I'm sure those punks at Disney don't make enough of these dresses either, but that's a topic for another discussion. Next thing that I did with my sequence, and this one seemed really obvious, but I just wasn't doing it because I'm an idiot. I started surveying my readers and just asking them why they aren't buying. Sounds simple, right? But I just wasn't doing it. Okay, and so here's some of the responses that I was getting, and some of these were kind of completely unexpected to me. This one wasn't one of them, but they were asking, does your course work? Give me some examples. And what's funny about this was I was already sprinkling testimonials all over the place in my emails, but for some reason, people just weren't seeing them. Okay, and I've got a lot of success stories with my class, so they're there. I probably just wasn't doing a good job of telling them about it. And so what I did with my sequence is I dedicated a part of this specifically to the student stories. Okay, and so I allowed certain students to guest post on my blog. Win-win here, right? They get a backlink, I get a compelling testimonial. I started interviewing students on my podcast, and I didn't tell them what to say, right? Nothing was rehearsed, just a realistic account of what it's like in the trenches to start an e-commerce store from scratch using my program. And I've kind of had 3 people on so far as of this recording. I have a single mother who's not tech savvy at all. I've got a young professional who's a little more tech savvy. And so these guest posts and interviews are all part of my autoresponder sequence today. Made a huge difference on the conversion rate. This one actually surprised me. I got this question was, does it apply to people outside of the United States? And this whole time I've been just so US-centric about everything that I was doing. But it turns out there's a lot of people who wanted to sign up for my class. They were worried that their target market was not large enough. Okay, and so I actually had a lot of students from overseas, and I just didn't think of emphasizing this fact. And so I had this student write me a guest post. And I chose this particular student because she lives in Ecuador, but she sells in the US because the target market in her area is not that large. And so she makes a lot of money using a third-party fulfillment house in the US to sell her products. And after seeing this, I started getting a lot more international customers for my course. Seems obvious now, but it didn't make sense to me I didn't think about it in the beginning. This is probably the most common question I get asked. Why do I need to sign up for your class when there's all this free information up on the web? Okay, and so I actually have 2 versions of this email for the autoresponder sequence. I have one targeting women and one targeting men. Okay, and so for the women, I give the example about when I was having my child. And when my wife was pregnant, I went and bought every single book out there on kids, right? Because I wanted to know everything about it. I read What to Expect When You're Expecting, The Happiest Baby on the Block. I even went so far as to learn baby language. I don't know if any of you guys are parents, but there's this class called Dunstan Baby Language where you can kind of analyze the baby's facial expression and whatnot and figure out exactly what they want. Okay? And so when our baby was born, I was really cocky. Okay? And so we took our baby home from the hospital. And it was the first night that we had to put her to bed, and my wife was like, bouncing the baby and trying to get her to sleep, and I was just standing there going, just waiting, right, and tapping my feet. And then finally, I was like, all right, I think it's time for us to go to bed. Hand her over to me. So pretend this is the baby. And so I took my child, and she was crying at the top of her lungs, and I was like, all right, honey, this is how you do it, all right? Got to do a nice rhythmic bounce, right? Every 5 seconds, 1, 2. But the baby still started crying. My baby still started crying, and she was giving me this look like, yeah, you're full of it. And I was like, I will now apply the happiest baby on the block technique. And for all of you parents out there, you kind of slide the baby over so that it's almost upside down. You hold her head like that, and then you pat on the back, you bounce, and then you go shh into her ear, okay? This actually worked for about a second, okay? And then the baby started crying again. And at this point, my wife was just laughing at me. I was like, shut up, all right? Okay? Because I will now apply my third technique. I will read the baby's language and instantly understand. And so I sat there looking into her eyes, right? And I was like, all right, she's hungry. Give me one of your boobs right now. Right? But that didn't work. And so what ended up happening was I ended up going to Babies R Us, and I bought every single piece of child pacification technology on the market, and we finally got our kid to sleep. Okay. So that's my sequence for the women. For dudes, they don't care about babies, right? They don't care about babies. They care about six-pack abs. And so for the guys, I told the story about my quest for six-pack abs and how I started out just doing sit-ups like crazy. I started drinking these like muscle shakes that promised that you would get six-pack abs if you drank this shake for 2 weeks straight. But nothing was working at all. Nothing was working at all. And I finally, kind of broke down and asked some of my friends who had done it before. And, they told me, first of all, you got to stop eating Krispy Kreme donuts. I think prior to that, I had made this Krispy Kreme hamburger. In-N-Out and Krispy Kreme are right next to each other where I live. And so if you take 2 donuts and then you put the patties in there, it actually tastes pretty good. But I was popping these things like crazy. And then they told me, getting six-pack abs is all about eating right. That's like 90% of the problem. And had I not talked to them, I would have still been struggling with that today. And so the moral of the story with these 2 stories is that, just because you've read what you've read online doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be prepared for what's going to come. Starting a business is like raising a child. It's like getting six-pack abs. You need some help and instruction to help you through the whole process. Okay, and so that's a very strong message that I give in my autoresponder sequence. A couple of other objections that I get, how much time and money is this going to cost me? So real simple for this one, just create a post that enumerates all the possible costs involved in starting an online store, make it a part of the sequence. To address the whole time thing, which is always something that's iffy, I just give a couple examples. I have one guy who started doing 6 figures in 1.5 years. Almost all the students make their first sale within the first couple of weeks. I have other stories of students who've created their stores within a month. Some of them take years. It's really up to how much money how much effort you want to put into it. Okay? And here's something really boneheaded that I didn't do that, kind of probing my readers really helped me. They asked me, what's the course like? What's it look like behind the scenes? Really boneheaded that I didn't do this. So I created a video with me kind of just narrating, going all the distinctive features of the class and that sort of thing. Again, I'm an idiot, right? I didn't think of doing this in the beginning. Okay, and so that was pretty much the feedback. And the main thing that I also didn't address was kind of like the fear factor, right? So I have a picture here of a lot of the FinCon attendees because I kind of wanted to emphasize the community aspect of starting any business. Now, for my wife and I, when we first started our business, it was just a really lonely process. And none of our friends were doing this. And so every now and then, I would get these snide comments from my friends. And they didn't mean to be snide, just to be fair. But they would ask, are sales still slow with your online store? And, it's got a negative connotation. I would always think to myself, yeah, jackass, they're still slow. And they didn't mean anything by it. But the point is that when you're starting something and none of your friends are doing it, it really helps to have a community behind you. Okay, and so in order for me to address the fear of getting started, I kind of emphasize all the community aspects of my class. The fact that you're going to be alongside all these like-minded people, just like how we are all here at FinCon, we kind of all have similar goals and that sort of thing. And so it really helps to have a community when you sign up for the class. In terms of monetary fear, how much does it cost? I tell the story about how we only invested $630 into our course, into our online store. And 200 of that was inventory. And so that pretty much squashes the monetary fear right off the bat. And the final thing that I was missing from my email autoresponder sequence was I wasn't addressing scarcity. Now, if a lot of those people out there, a lot of the gurus, they have classes where they shut it down and then they open it up again. And the reason they do that is because they get you to sign up because the class is closing down. But I wasn't doing that, and there's actually a lot of work involved associated with the launch, and I just didn't want to do that. I wanted my product to be evergreen. And so when your product can be bought at any time, how do you introduce scarcity into your product? Now, one way is you can just lie and say you're closing it down and opening it back up, but then people will catch on to that right away. So what I decided to do is I thought I'd just tell a couple of stories to kind of jumpstart it. And the best story that I had to offer was the story about my wife and how we kind of first got together. And so this is my lovely wife, for all of you who've never seen her before. And when I first met her, we were at a restaurant, and first thing I did when I saw her, I was just completely awestruck by her cuteness. And I'll never tell her this, and she's not watching this video, but I could not even look into her eyes at all because I was just so awestruck, and I couldn't talk to her at all. I wanted to ask her out, but the whole day went, and I didn't get her number, and I didn't even say hi to her. And it was like a dinner of 5 people. Pretty sad, I know. I had the opportunity to see her again at an engagement party a couple months later. And this time, I was really determined to actually go up to her and talk to her. And I actually managed to say hi to her. But I didn't get the digits again. And meanwhile, my buddies were like making fun of me and that sort of thing. And then one of my buddies actually told me the story about, it was a similar story, how he didn't take action. He almost lost his wife, to some other dude. And so when I heard all these stories, he was just pumping me up, trying to get me the courage. And finally, I just contacted a friend, got her digits, and just asked her out right there. And turns out that she actually had a couple of blind dates lined up like 2 weeks after I had asked her out. And so I'm just thinking to myself, this girl's out on the market, and I've already waited this long. I could have lost her if I hadn't asked her out when I did. And so I kind of told this story in a way to kind of push people to start their business now, because it takes time, and you really got to take the plunge in order to potentially reap the rewards. And that was the message. I got a lot of great feedback from this email when I sent it out. Kind of something similar to this vein. I talk a lot in one of these emails about planting money seeds. And Miranda runs the blog, Planting Money Seeds. Quick shout out. But the idea is, businesses take time to grow. And so the sooner you start, the sooner you can reap the rewards. And of course, I'm summarizing all this stuff, but all these emails collectively kind of push the reader to kind of want to get started now as opposed to waiting, in a very light sell sort of way. I'm not doing the hard sell at this point at all. Okay, and so let's sum up all of these persuasive tactics. One thing that I did not mention was this concept of reciprocation. Just a simple act, and I recommend that all of you guys have some sort of free giveaway in return for an email sign up, because the simple act of just giving something away makes that person kind of mentally owe you something. Okay, and so by giving something away, they're more likely going to be able to be willing to sign up for your full-blown course. Commitment, which we talked about, make people email you back with a comment saying, like, I'm going to take action on such and such, whatever you're selling, whatever you're promoting. Makes a big difference, and then you can establish a conversation. And as soon as you hit reply to that person, you're instantly connected. They're more likely to be more engaged in what you have to say. Social proof, which I talked about. Don't just kind of sprinkle testimonials all over the place. If you're going to do social proof, dedicate a dedicated email in your autoresponder sequence for it. Okay, people tend not to notice things that you think that they're going to notice, so you got to spell it out for them. And probably the most important part is just to be likable. Reveal quirky facts about yourself. Don't be afraid to show off your personality, and a little self-deprecation always helps too. And then scarcity is an important fact to getting them to buy. Make sure you have some sort of story in mind that will kind of push them to take action sooner rather than later. Okay, and so if you do these two things, one, increase the email signups to your list, and then increase conversions using the principles that I just described, you will easily double your sales. I can almost guarantee that. Okay, and so that is all I had. Here's my info. If you have questions, you can sign up for my list, see what I'm talking about firsthand. But I kind of gave you the live performance here, which will probably be more effective than the email. So